to another episode of the Wet Dreams podcast. I'm your host, Jose Gonzalez. I'm a sex therapist and a licensed professional counselor.
And I'm Dr. Brad Hinman. I'm also a licensed professional counselor, a licensed marriage and family therapist, and a sex therapist.
Yeah, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about trauma. We may have talked about, had another episode. I don't remember, but at this point it all bleeds together. But today, we're talking about trauma and how it affects your sexual health and how it affects men and all that good stuff. How would you just define trauma? Let's start there.
Yeah.
Let's jump into it.
I think of it as big T trauma and little T trauma. My clients often, when they describe trauma, they are describing one or the other of those. And really it's up to the client to describe whether they have big T trauma or little T trauma. Big T trauma is things like chronic sexual abuse, chronic physical abuse, emotional, like
PTSD, military, traumatic, like flipping your cards and that, right? I mean, it's big T trauma.
Yep. Like being kidnapped, like stuff, it's sex trafficked, like, I'm a sex therapist, so I always come back to sex every time. Yeah, there's those other things, but there's sex. So little T trauma might be things like a car accident if they're not gravely injured. Like my wife was at a standstill on the road and she got rear-ended. And so not her fault. We think the guy was actually looking at his phone while driving. Don't do that. And so that was 5 months ago. And then just the other day, she said to me, look, I don't know. I made some comment. She was driving and I made some comment and she's like, no, I can't. I'm afraid to like slow down or whatever because the person behind me will run into me. And I'm like, oh, you have trauma because of your car accident. Right. And so that would be little T trauma, unless it develops into a big T trauma for her, as in PTSD. But she does have some residue from that.
Right.
Which that's getting to your definition of trauma is something happened and then you have residue, what I describe residue left over from that your brain keeps coming back to. Like with PTSD, you can have nightmares, and then things can remind you of that, and then that puts you right back there in that situation. So that's trauma. And
just for clarification, the big T, little T is the scale of the event, or is it the scale of how it affects the person, or is it both?
All of it, yes.
Yeah, okay. It's both of those factors, both what it was, plus the effect on the person.
Right, because you can have somebody, like I say both, because you can have somebody that maybe the event wasn't that big of a deal. If you asked 100 people on the street, if that was a big deal, but they might say no, but the person's reaction might be huge.
Right. As if it
might be very debilitating. Yeah. So I think it's both, right? The magnitude of the event and then also how you're reacting to that in everyday life.
For sure. Yeah, and it's like, and then I think, obviously, the effects vary, or how you respond vary, and it's not to say one trauma is better or worse than the other person's trauma. And I think you can get into that, and we'll talk about that some more. We can get into that comparison of like, oh, but that's not going off and being shot at. But like what? But to the person and to the person's body and to the person's nervous system, it doesn't matter. The same, the same effect.
That's exactly. I've had that very conversation with clients because they'll say, "Well, I'm not being shot at, right?" Or something like that. And I'm like, "Well, first of all, it's not a competition, right? There's no trauma trophy,
right?
Like whoever gets the most, right? And then second of all, it's traumatic to your brain. It's traumatic to your body, even though the magnitude doesn't compare to watching your friends get blown off in war. Your head's so it's traumatic to you and for you.
Right. So part of this episode is just understanding and maybe giving some info or giving some shedding light on how, especially our guys, can be affected and may not even notice or whatever. And I think that's part of what we're trying to do here. So the body, how does the body typically react to trauma? Obviously, it varies, but generally, yeah, how does people's bodies react to trauma, would you say?
I think there's a lot of sensory overload, if you will, right, with trauma. So the trauma lives in the brain, but it definitely has an interaction and reaction from the body, right? So it can be touch. I've had people talk about smells. They react to smells.
Yeah. Or touching. I had someone touching a newspaper, like a texture of the newspaper brought them back to a past experience, like their hands. Yep.
And sounds, right? Around the 4th of July, you always hear like soldiers with PTSD reacting to fireworks sound. Or maybe I only hear that. Maybe everybody else doesn't hear that.
Right.
I hear people talking about that, right? People with trauma surrounding guns, they react pretty strongly to fireworks sound. So it can be auditory, it could be sensory. Sorry, I'm going through. I'm sure visual.
Olfactory.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Visual.
And smell. We talked about smell, right? So all the senses really. So it's a sensory reaction to the memory of the trauma.
Right, for sure. And we also talk about the whole fight, flight, freeze, fawn is interesting because I feel like I've had some more conversations lately about that, but I think often the fawn response is taken for granted or whatever, especially in some of the females that I've had, like getting into a sexual situation where they don't necessarily want to be, but they end up fawning or they end up just going through it anyways and be like, okay, let's get this thing over with. And that can cause a lot of guilt and be like, and confusion of like, well, I went through with it or I did that, like, but I shouldn't feel traumatic feelings towards that because I went and did that. But it's a fawn response.
Yep.
It's your body keeping you safe in that moment and just go with it and let it be done. And then you'll be safe at the other side of it, you know?
Yep.
Like that's an interesting one. I feel like we don't often talk about.
That's true. And so for our listeners, like you probably heard of fight, flight, or freeze. Fawn is, if you think of a deer in the headlights, they freeze, right? And so that can be a response to trauma as well, is the freezing. And like you said, then just letting stuff happen, because you'll be alive on the other side, right? So, and that can be and by the way, we don't choose. People think that they choose their reaction.
Right.
They're like, I'm going to fight. You don't know what you're going to do.
If I was in that situation, I would just fight back.
Right.
Yeah. You don't
like
know.
You don't know. You think you know, but you don't know until you're in the situation, because it's not a conscious choice. It just happens. Like whatever happens. It's not, you don't wake up one day and if I'm getting in trouble, I'm going to fight today. No. Yeah.
Right. You could have that in your mind leading up to the bad event and saying it over and over and over, and then your body can still do something. Yep. Like, it doesn't matter. You can't train yourself. I mean, you can train, I guess, sometimes you can kind of train reaction, but in that case, you can't tell yourself enough to do something and then it's going to happen. Like, it's just your nervous system reacting.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. So like, how about some experiences of our guys having this response to nervous system doing this? Have you had guys talk about these experiences in their life? Because I think often I hear it from females in sexual experiences of that fight, flight, freeze, or in if they're fighting with their partner or something like that. But how do guys experience that, would you say?
I've had guys probably do all
similar,
all of the different categories of those. Different people react in different ways. I've had couples talk about, well, when she said that, I just froze. Like I didn't know what to do. Right. And so often when it comes to emotions, guys tend to right? So
and shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a good transition, I think. some of I have a little bit of a list of some of the common patterns or whatever that happens, but one of the first ones, avoidance and shutdown. And I think guys do that often with emotions, or if there's I have plenty of guys that have conversations of their porn use or their sexual behaviors with their partner, and the partner's asking them questions, or in certain point in the conversation they're just like, and they shut down and like, I don't know what to say, or there's an expectation of what to say, or sometimes it's like an expectation to say more or to explain it or to say sorry in a different way, and they're just like shut down. That happens a lot, I feel like.
Yep. Because it's a defense mechanism, right? If I shut down, then you're gonna stop asking me uncomfortable questions, right? And then often also the female, if in a heterosexual relationship, if the female is doing the questioning because of the male's sexual behavior, she wants him to share, she wants him to talk about his emotions. And if he shuts down, that's going to bring her towards him. It's going to help her, or it's going to indicate to her that she needs to help him. So it's not only a defense mechanism, but it's also a subconscious. I don't think it's a conscious decision that they make, but it's a subconscious ploy to, rather than be on the attack, to get her to be in a helpful mode rather than why did you do the thing?
Right. To like flip it, kind of, definitely. Yeah, for sure. So that's one of them, the shutting down. Another example they give it within that shutting down is like dissociating during sex. I feel like that's like a common one. I've heard that from some clients, just shutting it off almost to the point of like not even remembering what happened, because of their past trauma. That's definitely a common one. Numbness. Some compulsivity. That's another one, like because of their trauma, having risky behaviors or risky hookups or whatever. Like that's a big one.
Yeah, I think people's reaction to trauma, especially if we're talking sexual responses, they can either be hypersexual, so too much, or hypo, too little sexual. Right. They can be hypersexual or hyposexual. Those are the two responses that we tend to see.
Right, for sure. Right, either they're wanting their sex drive is super high or whatever, they want sex all the time, and often they'll think that, at least our guys won't necessarily make that connection of like sexual trauma that's making them hypersexual. It's just like, no, this is just this is my sex drive. This is what I like. I don't know, whatever. But it's like, no, there was trauma.
Right.
For sure. Another dynamic, control. Obviously, I mean, a lot of times with trauma, there's this need for control. And often it comes out in other areas of their life because of the trauma that happened. Yeah, for sure. How do you think performance, another one, performance focus, like maybe having erectile issues, orgasm issues, anxiety, that all comes out? It's just a fun recipe, it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, when you introduce trauma, right, and then people are anxious because they're trying to control everything. They're trying to, the control is the brain's attempt to not experience trauma again. So they're trying to be like, well, if I do everything right and I plan all this out, then the trauma won't happen. I won't get an accident, or I won't get shot at or whatever, right? Because I'm careful. So in a sexual situation where trauma has been present in the past, and then you introduce anxiety because the person is worried that they're not going to be able to control everything. And then you have a past history of performance issues. So you're worried that it's going to happen again. Ain't no sex happening.
Yep. Yeah. That's a recipe.
Yeah. Because now you have all these breaks to kind of shout out to Emily Nagoski. You have breaks, right? So you have several breaks for the sex. And the only accelerator is I want to have sex. I feel sexual. But you have all these things like anxiety and a past history of poor performance. You're worried about poor performance again. So those things are all going to destroy the sexual performance.
Right, for sure. Not to mention, I don't know if you mentioned it, but not to mention shame. If there's shame around that initial sexual trauma that they experienced from the family member or from the person down the street, is often that shame or questioning, like, well, even sometimes, am I gay or whatever? Did I like it? Like, but I'm not gay. I wouldn't identify that way, but talk on that shame. And then guys often responses just like try to push through that, whether it be the erectile issues or whether it be that kind of stuff, like just shut it off and push through, which, as we know, helps a great deal. That doesn't, but
and some people have tried that, and they some people experience some success with that until they don't,
right?
And then they end up in here, right? So
exactly,
we have like our ability to white knuckle through or power through it varies from human to human, how much of that you can do. And so it seems easier to us because we're therapists to deal with that trauma and work through it and let it go so that it doesn't have to control you. But there's people who decide to power through.
Right. Who push through for sure. What would you, like if some guys listening or thinking about trauma or most likely being like, I don't have any trauma, I don't know. But that's probably the response. Like, what do you think would help that person, in their early stages of even thinking about, like, was that traumatic? And again, by the way, not necessarily just sexual trauma, but also trauma in their family or the idea of having to, take care of their family and work early. I've had several clients of that, like when they're young, thrust into this role of like being the provider or partially provider for the family. Like, I feel like can be a form of trauma. So anyways, not just sexual. Like, what would be helpful for those guys initially as they're like even coming to grips with maybe trauma?
Well, I would challenge them and say, you have experienced trauma.
If you thought it would probably happen.
Yes. I think everybody has experienced some form of trauma.
Yeah, true.
And so, but then I feel like that the real answer to your question is for them to notice, like, why am I doing what I'm doing, right? Surrounding this. Why do I feel the need to control everybody? Why do I feel the need to walk away from sexual encounters if my performance is affected? Why might I feel compelled to masturbate 7 times in one day? Like, perhaps there's a reason for that, other than you think that you have a high sex drive, which is an excuse, right?
Yeah.
No one needs to masturbate 7 times in one day.
Right.
I don't care how high your sex drive is. And so, so the answer is like asking, just gently ask yourself, why do I do that? Why? I wonder why. What is there a reason behind that? Why I might be doing XYZ behavior or avoiding XYZ behavior, right? So I always tell my clients, ask yourself why between now and the next session. And then when you come back, let's open that box of why and figure out if there's a reason in there. Or do we need to keep asking why?
Right.
So once you figure out what it is, then ask yourself, what am I going to do about that? Right? Is this something I want to change? Or is this not something I want to change? Right? Because like, you need a certain level of anxiety. This is a controversial statement. I think like our life functions better when we have a certain amount of anxiety. It helps us perform better. Right. But when it gets beyond a certain threshold, then that's when I'm saying, all of that example was like, what are you going to do about it? Eliminate all anxiety from my life. You may not want to do that because then you probably won't perform as well. I'm not talking about just performing sexually, but perform at work as well without anxiety, right? And so is this something that I should do something about, change or not?
Right. Yeah, and I found like that kind of approach for guys, like kind of like let's see, like I don't know, it's like maybe short circuits the going to a solution thing immediately,
Yeah.
like because guys want to be like, okay, well, what do I do about it? I'm gonna fix it, blah, blah, blah. And I often will be like, we'll see. Maybe there's something there, maybe there's not. Like, let's just talk about it some more. Like, we'll see. Maybe that, like, perhaps that was because of your upbringing or your dad or whatever. Like, could be. I don't know, or could not be. Like, I keep
Right.
it like, I don't know. We'll see. And I'm in the back of my mind. I was like, yeah, for sure.
Right.
That's definitely because you're dad. But
Yeah.
because there's something about, I don't know. It's just, I feel like that works best with guys. Like, just gently question,
Yep.
lightly question. Like, could be, it could not be. Ambiguity. Right. It's funny.
Let's explore that more.
Yeah.
Right?
Let's talk about it. Maybe not. Because I think, like, yeah, I guess you just have to open the box a little, just slowly,
Well, it's like a butterfly when it's kind of coming out of its chrysalis, right?
Yeah.
If you help it, then it dies, right?
Right.
So sometimes therapy is like that. Like we have to let them kind of come to the conclusion themselves slowly, right? Because if we tell them, then they could reject that out of hand, be like, that's not what that is. Because that people have like the trauma and their reaction to the trauma, they've buried that under layers of coping mechanisms over time. And so us ripping all that off too soon, they don't have any way of handling that. They don't have any way of coping with it because we've taken that away.
Yep. Right. Exactly. So how would a guy, again, specifically guys, but anyone, but how would a guy know, they're starting to question and whatever? How would you know that maybe it's time to talk to someone, or it's like, this is like intense, or this is like, oof, I can't do it on my own anymore? Like, how would one know that you were at that point, do you think?
To me, in my head, I always compare this to like GPS. So if I want to go, we're in Michigan. If I want to go to Disney World, right? That's the one in Florida, right?
Yeah.
I always get them confused.
Disney, for sure.
If I want to go to Disney World, if I know how to get there, then I don't need GPS.
Right.
If I don't, then I need GPS. So when you're like, what does this have to do with my question?
Like, that's a long drive. I don't know. I'm about to get lost. Yeah.
Because GPS also helps you find out where construction is and all this kind of stuff, right? Detours.
Yeah.
And so your question was, how does somebody know when to get help? Well, if you know where you want to go and you know how to get there, then you may not need therapy. But if you don't know how to get there, then a therapist,
or even where you want to go,
yes, then a therapist will help you with that.
Right. We're like mental health travel agents.
Yes. Yeah. we're therapy GPS.
Brain GPSs. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that for sure. Yeah.
Because often clients come in and they're like, here's where I am and here's where I want to be.
Yeah.
But they don't know any of this part in between.
Right, for sure.
And I'm like, well, that's my job is to do this, right? To connect those two dots.
For sure.
Because here's where I am that's what we do when we do an intake, is we find out where they are. And then their therapeutic goal is where they want to be. But then they're in therapy because they don't know
how to get there.
Or they've tried things to get there.
Right.
And it didn't work. Right. So you tried it your way.
Yep.
Now you're here.
You can try my. Yeah, I feel like you've said that like a million times to people. You've tried it your way.
I did.
Yeah, that's like it. I need a shirt with that on there, a bumper sticker or whatever.
That's true. I do. We need merch.
If anyone can design that, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I like that for sure. And I think and another thing often is the partners. Like if your partner is telling you that you should get therapy, you should get therapy. That's like often how it starts for guys.
It is.
Like your partner saying, yeah, this is like excessive. Or this is too much. Like maybe you should think like, listen to your partners, please listen to them. They are usually right.
Yeah. It's because like there's a whole reason behind that too. I mean, yes, they are. I'm
Yes.
not arguing with that.
Yeah,
There's no but. They are right. But there's a reason for that, is because what I have in my head, right, bouncing around ideas in there, they're all right because they belong to me, right? So they're all right.
Yeah.
But then when I do something, like when I take one of those ideas and it comes out my hands or out my mouth, and my wife is like, what is wrong with you?
Right.
Because we don't have that like accountability in our head. Like whatever we think is right.
Right.
But then when it manifests itself into the outside world and people are like, there's something wrong with you. You need to go to therapy. It's because there's an added layer of, like with clients, I always use the example of if you're riding with me in a car and I'm going too fast and I'm driving reckless, you're going to turn to me and say, slow down.
Right. Right.
When I'm by myself, there's nobody's turning to me and saying, slow down.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Or maybe there is. I've been married for 38 years. Her voice lives in my head.
Yeah, exactly. Your nervous system is her voice.
Yes, right.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. Cool. I mean, that was a little quick and dirty one, but yeah, is there anything you would add to someone that's maybe struggling with that or starting the process of thinking about their trauma and how it affects them sexually? Any other thoughts?
Yes. So it surprises me how, I guess it doesn't surprise me anymore, but it did surprise me how many of my clients have had sexual trauma or some other form of big T trauma in their life and never told anybody about it. Right. So often I'm the only person that knows. Maybe if it's a good day, me and their partner knows.
Right. Yep.
And so they've carried this around with them for decades sometimes. And that's what we're for. That's what we're here to help. Right. And we realize that it's weird to talk to a stranger. I get it. I have a weird job, right? Like people come in here, they don't know me and they tell me all their secrets. Right. And so, but there's also benefit to that. Right. Because I'm not going to tell them to clean their room. Or I'm not going to tell them that not to wear those color socks. Like I don't have any vested interest. Like I just was talking to another therapist today and I said, that I don't have a vested interest in them being happy or not. Because for example, I've had clients say, you're going to get mad at me because I didn't do the homework that you gave me. I'm not going to be mad. Like you don't pay me enough to be mad at me, to be mad at you. Not living your life. Right. Like I have no buy-in to whether you did your homework or not. It's just going to cost you more money because now you have to do it in session when you could have done it for free at home. But anyway, back to trauma. It's like we are here to help you process your trauma. And often talking through it helps because it gives you that perspective, just even hearing yourself talk through it out loud. And then also we can help you to come up with alternative coping mechanisms that are safe. And by safe, I'm talking about, because both of us have clients with out of control sexual behavior, and that's what I'm calling not safe, right? Because you could lose your marriage, or you could lose your kids, or lose your job, or lose yourself, or whatever. And so we can help you come up with alternative coping mechanisms that are safe, socially acceptable. I use that with my clients, coping mechanisms that are socially acceptable. And so you don't have to suffer alone, I guess is what I'm saying, right?
Definitely.
And that the sexual behavior, which is why you're listening to this podcast, is a symptom of the problem, right? Because people come in here every day and say, this is the problem, the sexual behavior. Well, that's nice that you think that, but it's a symptom of this thing that you've been hiding for 20 years. That you don't talk about with anybody. Ever. That's the problem. Yes. This is a manifestation of that problem. Right? So, and if we process this and you can put this to bed, the trauma, that's the this I'm talking about, and you can put that to bed and walk away from it then you won't need
Yep.
the sexual behavior
Right.
anymore.
Right.
The problematic sexual
Right.
behavior.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And it's hard. I mean, I think it's, this thing that you've held for so long, like it's like part of you, and it's hard to confront, but I always, my go-to, because of my have kids, my go-to is always to bring it towards, like, what if a kid did that? Like, think about your son, daughter, niece, nephew, friend's daughter, whatever, son or daughter. If something happened to them, would you not want them to share that with someone, or say it out, or like seek support, or like get a trusted individual, a trusted person? Like, for sure, you'd 100% agree with that and be like, yeah, they definitely should tell somebody about that. That applies to you as an adult.
Yep.
You know what I mean? We can't go back in time and you tell someone that when it happened, but you can do it now, and you can face it and talk to somebody, even if it's just the therapist, the one person. Like, obviously it would help to talk to more people, but even if it's that one person that you told, like, that's already taking power back, and that's already shedding light on it and starting to do something about it. Like, you can agree that anybody else should share it. Why not you?
There's some secrets that are not meant to be kept.
It's true. Definitely. Right. Sweet. Cool. Well, thanks for listening. Let us know about what you think about today's episode, and anything that it brought up, or anything that comes to mind. We'd love to hear from you about any of our topics, and feel free to check out our socials, Wet Dreams with a Z podcast, and all our socials: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, etc. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, guys.
The Wet Dreams podcast and any content posted is intended for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes only. We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional, diagnosis, or treatment. Listeners should not disregard or delay in obtaining a medical advice for any medical or mental health condition they may have, and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.